Here we have a 15 Nissan Versa note, but this brake job is going to apply to all Nissan Versas. Here's the tools and the items that I use to do this job. I'll mention them throughout the video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is get this hubcap off, and just need some sort of prying tool like I'm using here, and eventually it'll pop off. Now as you can see on my car, I have a wheel lock, so usually the key to your wheel lock is in your glove compartment, so you might want to try looking for that before you even start the job. The key for the wheel lock is only going to fit on one way, so you just have to rotate it until it locks in. Then you can go ahead and take it off. And by the way, all of the lug nuts, including the key for the wheel lock, are all 21 millimeters. So I'm using the 21 millimeter socket on my 1/2 inch ratchet here. You could also use a breaker bar. And now that all of the lug nuts are loose, you could go ahead and jack up the car. You don't want to jack up the car and try to loosen the lug nuts afterwards, because the wheel is just going to spin after that. So now that the car is off the ground, or at least this wheel is, go ahead and take the lug nuts completely off. And here's where I lifted up my car using the jack. I put it right underneath the subframe. It's a pretty safe spot to do it. And here, as you can see, I'm also using a jack stand. You want to be safe. Make sure you use a jack stand. You can't rely on the floor jack. So to make the brake job easier, what you want to do is get in the car and turn the wheel so that the brake caliper is facing you, like I just did right here. Now here I'm using my 3/8 ratchet with a 14 millimeter socket. This lower bolt and the upper bolt are going to be the same size. But in order to get the caliper to rotate upwards so you can get to the brake pads, you just have to take out the lower bolt. And as you can see how it rotates up, and that gives you access to the brake pads. So first off, let's take off these small springs that go on the pads. They're basically just to separate the pads. So make sure you don't lose those, just put them aside somewhere. And now you could go ahead and take off the brake pads, which they're really easy to just slide right off. And as you can see, my brake pads still look like they're in great condition. At this point, my car only has about 10,000 miles on it, so I have no need to change these brake pads. I'm just doing this to show other people how to get it done. And here goes the rear brake pad. Keep in mind, both brake pads are different. You can't really put the rear brake pad on the front. I'll touch base a little bit more on that later on in the video. I'm going to remove these clips that retain the brake pads, mainly just to clean them off. If you're doing this job, normally you would have new clips that come with the brake pads, so make sure you change these out. In my case, I'm just going to clean them and put them back on. And now we have to compress the piston on the caliper. As you can see here, I'm using this blue shop towel to protect my brake pad. This is something that you do not have to do. I'm doing this because, like I said, my brake pads are still good and I don't want to damage them here. But normally, since you're going to be replacing your brake pads, what you want to do is use your old brake pad right here to compress the piston on the caliper. So all you have to do is just keep on compressing the piston on the caliper until it bottoms out. Once it bottoms out, you're done with that. And if you're just replacing the brake pads on your car and you're not actually doing the rotors, all you have to do at this point is go ahead and clean any dirt or debris off from the caliper, put your new brake pads in, and do not forget about those two springs that sit on top of the brake pads, and you could go ahead and start buttoning everything back up. Now, if you're interested in learning how to replace the rotor on your car as well, just keep watching the video, and towards the end of the video I'm also going to give you the torque specs for all the bolts that we removed. These two bolts holding the caliper bracket to the knuckle are both 17 millimeters. I was using my 3/8 ratchet to get them off, but they were on there pretty tight. So if they're giving you trouble, I suggest moving up to a 1/2 inch breaker bar or a 1/2 inch ratchet to get them off. I decided to take the caliper bracket completely off the car, so all you have to do is pull that boot back and it'll let the pin slide out and the caliper is free to come off, and now I'm just sitting it on top of the rotor here. So with that off, the bracket is completely free to come off the car now. Now we have to move the caliper out of the way. So I just found this box in my garage that's just about the right height to carry the caliper. You definitely do not want to leave it hanging from the hose. It could cause some damage. So with the brake caliper out the way and the bracket completely off of the car, you're free to remove the rotor like I did. And I put some anti-seize on the hub before I put the rotor on, just to make sure it doesn't rust in the future. Now, if you're using new rotors, make sure you clean them. You could use brake parts cleaner. You could also use soap and water to just clean them, but you want to clean the oily residue that's on the new rotors. So make sure you clean them before you put them on your car. And a small tip to help with the rotor is grabbing one of your lug nuts and just thread it onto one of the studs. It'll keep the rotor in place. Here I'm just applying more anti-seize to the hat of the rotor, and this is just to prevent the actual wheel itself from sticking to the rotor. So here's the caliper bracket, and as you can see, there's already some rust on here. It's not bad by any means, but there's enough for me to just want to go ahead and clean it right now. But if you see a lot of rust on yours, you definitely want to take care of that. It's really going to affect the way the brake pads move. So what I have here is a small file, and you're not trying to take any material off of the actual metal of the caliper bracket. You just want to get the rust off. You just want to have a clean surface. After you're done with all the filing to get the rust off, go ahead and use some brake parts cleaner or even soap and water to take off any loose dirt, and you're pretty much done here. Now here I am cleaning my brake clips, but if you got new brake pads and the new clips were included, just go ahead and use the new ones. But if you don't have new clips, you want to make sure that you do clean the old ones before you go ahead and reinstall them. So here's a before and after of the clips. They're not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And here's some of the brake parts lubricant that I like to use on the calipers. I put this on before I put the clips on, and it basically prevents rust from happening in between the caliper bracket and the clip itself. Now, originally, these bolts did not have any thread locker on them, but I'm just going to play it safe and put some blue thread locker on them. Now, you don't need a lot, just a little bit on each one, and that's good enough. And this is where putting that nut to hold down the rotor really helps you, because now the rotor is sitting flat, so it's going to help you get this caliper bracket installed a lot easier. And now you could go ahead and install the clips that you just cleaned or your new ones. Okay, and as you can see, both of the brake pads are not the same. One of them has this metal tab coming off the side, and that's basically just a wear indicator to let you know when your brake pads are wore down. So the one with the wear indicator goes on the back side, and the brake pad that does not have the wear indicator obviously goes on the front side. Now, I don't think it's possible to mix them up. I don't think the caliper would allow you to put the brake pad in front. It's gonna have some sort of interference. And of course, once you get the brake pads in, now you could go ahead and put the two spring clips in. Another thing you want to inspect on your car is the slide pins for the caliper. Now, mine are okay, but I'm just gonna go ahead and add a little bit more grease to them. I'm actually using dielectric grease. It's fine to use for this. One thing you do not want to use is wheel bearing grease. Wheel bearing grease is not the same type of grease. It's actually going to cause you more problems if you use that. It's actually going to like cake up and get really hard and just kind of cause all kind of weird brake problems. Now let's go ahead and put the caliper back on the bracket, and you just have to slide it in like that. One thing you want to make sure you do is get this rubber boot and get it to go over that lip, because if you don't get it in there, and it's not going to seal properly, you're going to get all kinds of moisture and contaminants in there, and that's going to cause, again, more problems. And the lower slide pin also has its own dust boot, so just like the top one, make sure you get that dust boot over that lip to keep any moisture or contaminants out of it. Now, I didn't really need to take this bolt off to put thread locker on, but I figured I took off the other one and I applied thread locker, so it just made me feel a lot better to do both of them. And that's pretty much it on how to do your own brakes. So if the video helped you, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.